Today's lesson is on parallel and perpendicular lines, and this is sort of like part 1 of 2. So, most students at this point know that parallel lines are two lines that run side by side that never touch. In order to do that, their slopes have to be the same, exactly the same. If one slope is 3/5, then the other slope has to be 3/5 because it has to go up 3 and right 5. They have to rise and run at the same rate. If one slope is a -1/2, then the other slope has to be a -1/2 because it has to go down 1, right 2. It has to fall and run at the same rate. Perpendicular lines are two lines that cross, but they have to cross at a 90-degree angle. Their slopes are two things: opposite signs and flipped. So if I have one slope that is 2/5, perpendicular slope would be a -5/2. If I have one slope that is a -3, then the other slope is a +1/3. So fill in the chart given the following slopes. So M stands for slope. This is my symbol for parallel lines. It's two lines that run side by side, but you put them at a diagonal so it doesn't look like an 11. And this is the symbol for perpendicular lines. It's an upside down capital T. So if my slope is a -3, what would be the slope that's parallel to that slope? And it would have to be exactly the same, -3. Perpendicular to that slope, I've got to do the opposite sign and flip it. So it's going to be a +1/3. 2/5 for parallel would be exactly the same, +2/5. Perpendicular would be opposite sign and flipped. Slope of 1 parallel would be exactly the same, which is a 1. And for perpendicular, I'm going to change the sign and flip it. But if you think about it, 1 is 1/1. If you flip it, you still have 1/1. So you still have a 1. So it looks like we didn't flip it, but we really did. And you have to change the sign. If my slope is a -1/6, parallel would be exactly the same. Perpendicular, change the sign and flip it. So it would be a +6/1, which I'm just going to write as a 6. Then this is our special case. Remember him, slope is 0. That's a horizontal line. Parallel would be exactly the same, which would be 0. But now think about perpendicular. What is perpendicular to a horizontal line? Answer is a vertical line. And what is the slope of a vertical line? Undefined. Are the following lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Remember, neither just means that they've randomly crossed, which is 90% of the lines we have. So if I want to know if they're parallel, which means they would have the same slope, perpendicular, which means they would have opposite signs and flipped slopes, or neither, meaning there's no relationship whatsoever, I have to find their slope. Well, this guy right here, I know his slope is a -1. But this guy right here, I don't know what his slope is yet because he is not solved for y. So I have to solve him for y. So his slope is a -1. So their slopes are the same. So this is when you would normally say, hey, they're parallel. But this one's tricky. By definition, parallel lines never touch. Well, if you look at these two equations, not only do they have the same slope, they also have the same y-intercept, which means they are the same line. Which means how many times do they touch? Well, they touch at every single point. So they can't be parallel because they touch. So this is neither. So this is the tricky one. Yes, they have the same slope, so normally you would think they were parallel. But because they are the exact same line, they touch at every single point, so they can't be parallel. So they are neither. Okay, number 2, determine if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So the first one, I'm going to take the first equation and solve him for y because I need his slope. So his slope is a 1/3. Then I'm going to take the other line and solve him for y because I need his slope. So if I look at his slope is a 1/3. So since they are the same, these lines are parallel. Number 3, what is the perpendicular slope to the line whose equation is x minus 3y equals negative 12? I'm going to box in the word perpendicular. So I want the perpendicular slope to this guy. So I need to know what this guy's slope is. So I'm going to solve him for y. So if his slope is a 1/3, and I want the slope that's perpendicular to that, the perpendicular slope would be, change the sign and flip it, a -3. Okay, number 4 and number 5 are tricky. Lots of kids miss these. It says, what is the parallel slope to the line x equals -3? And a lot of people say, oh, well, it'll be -3 because parallel lines have the same slope. But if you'll remember, this is not his slope. This is x equals a -3. So this is a vertical line. What is the slope of a vertical line? Undefined. Well, if I want to be parallel to that, then my slope needs to be undefined. So again, this is a vertical line. His slope is undefined. If I want to be parallel to him, then my slope needs to be undefined. What's the slope that's perpendicular to that? What is a slope that's perpendicular to an undefined slope, a vertical slope? And that would be a horizontal slope who has a slope of 0. Number 5, what's a parallel slope to the line y equals 5? Y equals 5 is a horizontal line. His slope is 0. So parallel to that would be 0. What is the perpendicular slope to the line y equals 5? Y equals 5 is a horizontal line whose slope is 0. Perpendicular to that would be a vertical line whose slope is undefined. Are the following lines that go through the respective points parallel, perpendicular, or neither? So the first thing I need to do is find their slope. So for line A, y minus y over x minus x. So his slope is a 1/6. Line B, so one slope is a -1/6 and the other slope is a +6. So their slopes are perpendicular. Number 7, same thing. Line A, that reduces. Line B, and they are perpendicular because they are opposite signs and flipped. Okay, so we'll do the on your own. Are the following lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Okay, so let's try one more of these. Y minus y over x minus x. So that one's a -3/4. Y minus y over x minus x. Negative over negative is a positive. So if his slope is a negative 3/4 and his slope is a positive 3/4, are they the same? No. So they're not parallel. Are they opposite sides and flipped? No. So they are not perpendicular. So these are neither. This one's tricky because they're really close and it makes you want to say that they're parallel or that they're perpendicular, but they are neither because it doesn't fit any of the qualifications.